Hey LinkedIn, welcome back to Business Unusual, a show where we're talking about the coronavirus and its impact on the way that we work and the way that we live. I'm your host, Jordan Dahl. Today, we're going to be talking about the nation's food supply and how our small farms and ranches are coping amidst this pandemic. If you go to the grocery store these days, you'll find tomatoes, fruit, and a lot of other goods like you would in normal times. But down others, it can seem like there's nothing left. Parts of the country are struggling with finding meat, and there is now a nationwide shortage of beef and pork. Lines at food banks have never been longer, and there is a very real fear that people will starve in this crisis. But at the same time, we're seeing that crops are being plowed over, gallons of milk are being poured out, and pigs are being culled. So, what is leading to this dichotomy? What is the future of food in the US, and will our local farms and ranches that feed much of the country be able to survive this? Today, we have a panel of experts from across the country who are going to help answer those questions and more. But I want to hear from you as well. What are you finding and what are you making at home? Are there goods that you can't get your hands on, and what are you making instead? As always, we're going to be taking your questions throughout the stream, so definitely want to hear from you. So we have a couple of people joining us already. Hello to Lauren from Houston and Ariel from Toronto, Alberto from Brazil, and Terry from Atlanta. We have a nice international mix today. Thank you all so much for joining and being with us. Definitely leave your comments and your questions in the stream. With that, I want to go to our panel. Today, we have Pamela Alexander. She owns Collab Farms in Southern Florida. And we have Jim Barbour. He harvests grain and raises grass-fed cattle in Pennsylvania. And finally, Steve Olson, and he is a cattle rancher in upstate New York. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello.
Just start with, I want to give viewers a brief introduction, if you would, of what goods that you are currently producing. Jim, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, we're in Northeast Pennsylvania. We have grass-fed American Aberdeen beef. We also grow vegetables. We do CSAs, community-supported agriculture, where people come and they'll get a share of vegetables. So we're a small family farm, just growing as we go along here in the markets that we have. But we've had some challenges with weather. We're getting our crops in the ground so far this year with snow and cold. But looking forward to a great season, even in the midst of shutdown and fears.
A good reminder that even in the midst of this pandemic, Mother Nature is not aware of that and does not really care. So glad to see that things are still going well for you. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I'm just north of Jim. I'm in Western New York, between the cities of Rochester and Syracuse, the beautiful area known as the Finger Lakes. I'm a retired livestock and meat marketing specialist from the Department of Agriculture. So after 32 years being away, I came back home to upstate New York. And my wife and I, we have a herd of 75 mama cows. We do what's known as a birth to finish program. We raise naturally raised cattle or naturally raised beef that goes to a branded program known as Northeast Family Farm Program, which is run out of a packing company in Boston, Massachusetts. Their clientele is exclusively high-end restaurants in the Boston and New York metropolitan areas. So when the pandemic hit, I got the call, said, we aren't taking any beef. And I came up with a time where I had 32 calves that were ready to market. They were finished, and I had no home for. So that's been challenging. And same thing as Jim, the weather. We have worse weather than but I was planting corn during a darn snowstorm. So it's been really challenging. But, I'm still having fun, though.
Great. Pamela, let's go to you. You are raising crops in Southern Florida, correct? No, I think we may have lost Pamela. Well, before we will get her back in the stream, but let's keep going. Oh, are you back? Hi, Pam.
I'm back.
Can
Yes,
you
thanks. Sorry. Now
Hi,
I can
Pam.
hear you.
No problem.
I'm back.
So you're just giving a brief introduction of what you do. You are raising crops in southern Florida, yeah?
Yes, we have several greenhouses, and it's a small production. We do all organic methods, all different types of crops for our local market. So, and we have chickens, chicken eggs, and duck eggs also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So,
Yeah.
Pam, I want to stick with you. Before this pandemic, you were selling exclusively to restaurants and at your local farmers market.
Correct.
Both of those distribution venues very quickly dried up. So,
Yeah.
what have you been doing with your produce? Who are you selling it to now?
Luckily, because of the size of our operation and the variety of produce that we sell, we were able to make a really quick shift over to an online pre-purchase and then a pickup situation. So one of our farm locations is pretty close to downtown Stuart. So people will go online for 2 different pickups for a Wednesday and a Saturday. They can buy everything online. We have CSA boxes, all sorts of a la carte things, prepared things. They purchase ahead of time, and then we have windows on Wednesdays and Saturdays. They literally drive up, we put the produce in their car, and they leave. And that has been remarkably successful for us, and we're very fortunate for that.
Yeah, sounds like a great way of doing it. I would totally sign up for that. Very convenient.
Yeah.
Jim, what about you? Who were your main buyers before this hit, and has that been altered at all?
Well, it really hasn't at this point. Our growing season is a little different than Pam's is in Florida. So we haven't, we have a greenhouse full of plants that we haven't even been able to put out yet because we're only like 4 days away from our last freeze when we were down in the 20s for like 4 days in a row. So our season, as far as our CSAs and people coming to get produce, is going to be the second half of June before we really get rolling. There are people who contacted us to see if we were still going to do it, and obviously people eat, so yes, we are. Our social distancing here on a rural farm in Pennsylvania isn't too hard to do. We'll have it set up so, it depends on where we're at. When people come, they'll be able to get their produce and take it with them. We'll do whatever we need to make that happen. So, not a lot yet has changed for us, except for the mindset of people. We have a lot of people that are interested in beef. We've now seen how fragile our food supply is, and how quickly shelves can be emptied in the grocery store. And people are looking at how they can be more self-sufficient, how they can have meat in their freezer. I understand it's hard to buy freezers now because people are wanting to do that. Also, there's a shift back to how to can. We're going to be teaching some people this summer how to go back to canning. So they can preserve some things and have them, have it on the shelf, which brings a sense of hope and security in the midst of the things that we're seeing go on. So far we haven't seen a lot of change, but it will, mostly in the mindset of people and how we can meet their needs.
Totally. Yeah, people are getting reacquainted with their kitchens and learning how to cook for the first time for many. I know my cooking has vastly improved. It was pretty sad before this. Steve, you touched on this very briefly in your introduction. Most of your cattle, or all of your cattle, were actually accounted for from the day that they were born, and they were slated to go to these restaurants, and you raised them specifically for that purpose. That's very expensive. Did you find a new buyer in the end to take your cattle, and were you able to make a similar profit?
Yeah, well, that Northeast Family Farms, that's known as a branded program. And to meet some of these programs, as there are many of them, there's certain protocols you have to meet as far as what constitutes naturally raised without the use of antibiotics and no growth stimulants and that. So I had cattle produced for a very specific purpose. And then, of course, the market dropped too, because I thought, well, good, I'll sell them in open market to our friends there near Jim at Wyalusing at the Cargill plant, or JBS in Souderton, Pennsylvania. But that market went south. And I was faced with a situation. If I sold them through that way, or if I could sell them, I'd be losing about $300 per head. I'm very lucky. I have a pretty good network of friends in the area. We used to do a lot of freezer trade. I've signed on to a local distributor who markets naturally raised beef for local distribution and to families, some restaurants that do takeout in that. And I am getting a premium price enough to so that I can suffice. So I am lucky. There's others like me that's still having problems. A lot of people say, "Hey, sell directly to the consumer." I don't know how many consumers would like to have a 1,200-pound finished steer in their living room. The situation we're faced with in upstate New York is these small, mid-sized packing plants. They're backed up. In fact, if somebody asked me for a side of beef, I wouldn't be able to get an appointment to have it harvested till late fall or next winter. Some packing plants say, "Hey, next year." So that it's a dilemma.
Definitely. No, I don't think most consumers would be up for having a 1,200-pound steer hanging out in their living room. So maybe Pam. My cats love it. I'm sure they'd be
We'll
thrilled.
take some of your beautiful beef.
If you are just joining us, we are talking today about the nation's food supply and how our local farms and ranches are coping. We're taking your comments and your questions in the stream. I see we have quite a few coming in. Nicole wants to know, are you guys having challenges getting workers?
Our big focus.
You have a pretty robust workforce, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, our big focus was to keep our staff employed. We're in a somewhat of a suburban location, and so as far as it affecting how our customers are behaving, nobody wanted to go to the farmers markets. Those were all shut down. So being able to find another way to get our produce out there was a really key part of keeping our staff employed. We cook things for the market. We do sourdough breads. We jar and can our products for other uses. So for us to be able to keep our kitchen open and all of that was really important. And because we were small enough, we could structure our shifts so that we didn't have too many people working in the same spaces at the same time, so that everybody, health-wise, safety-wise, they felt confident. So we haven't had a hard time finding people. We've actually had a lot of people want to come and work out at the farms, to kind of get away from, some of the more enclosed work environments.
Yeah, could be a respite for very many people and also a great source of income. Definitely.
Yeah.
Lori wants to know, do any of these farms and ranchers supply grocery stores, either before the pandemic or now? And what about these direct-to-consumer models? Is this a new innovation for farms and ranches? Jim, would you be able to take this one?
Yeah, as far as we're just a small family farm, so we haven't been supplying restaurants or grocery stores at this point. Although in a desperate search for that many people are undergoing, we did have a call from a restaurant a couple hours away from us the other day, wanted to know if we could supply them with hamburger because they had a restaurant and a couple food trucks and just couldn't find it. And so those kinds of things are going on. For us, as was already said, if we need to harvest an animal, the small places around are booked up for months and months to be able to get one in. So that's a challenge. But as far as direct marketing, that's the oldest concept, not new, but it's certainly making a comeback now with the things that are going on. You see various social media where people are looking to buy a half a beef or a pig, a half a pig, whatever. There's just a lot of connection now going back to the way things used to be, some barter and trade and reestablish some relationship with friends and neighbors, and that in today's age, neighbors can be quite a ways away. But there's a lot of things now being shipped, for frozen meats and things. So it is changing a lot of people's mindset. We are not there yet, but we will be. I think, our business model is shifting some toward more direct marketing, and even consumer boxes, packages where people can, get a smaller box of things instead of buying a half a steer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've also seen on social media of people helping one another out at the very beginning of the pandemic when eggs and flour were really hard to find. There was actually a nurse who was looking and people were just volunteering and, hey, I'll put it on my porch, you can come by and get it. So definitely seeing more of a connection and people really helping one another out, which is maybe a very nice byproduct of all of this. To your point about shortages and people, not finding goods, we're definitely seeing a lot of that here in the comments. Sandra says they are limiting the amount that you can buy to 1 pork and beef here in Texas. Bob is learning to make things from scratch. No more fast food. Seems to be having some good luck with this.
Good.
Olson says, I'm definitely a meat eater, but I have limited myself to 1 meat meal a day because they are limiting what we can purchase. Which I think a lot of people are starting to do, of rethinking their diets and the kind of food that they're consuming and maybe what is sustainable. There's one other question here, though, that I want to give to Steve. David wants to know, when the nation opens, will farmers be able to keep up with demand? And Steve, you've talked a little bit about this in terms of the production plants and how backed up they are. What do you see this looking like when more states reopen and things get back to a pseudo-normalcy?
Well, I think I agree with Jim. You're going to start seeing more direct marketing going on. But the issue we had when the pandemic hit, our supply chain in the United States was very segmented. We had the hotel, restaurant, institutional trade just got shut off right immediately. And when we entered this, we were at a time where, do you realize a majority of Americans actually ate out rather than cook their meals at home? So we had the retail sector that was going fine, but then you had the hotel, restaurant, institution sector that got shut off. And our supply chain at first really didn't know what to do. We had, I understood there was warehouses for the restaurants industry, and that was just full of food. Now they have started to get themselves straight, where you're starting to see the full-line food distributors actually now sell to grocery stores. As far as answering that question directly, yes, United States is very efficient in raising livestock in a rapid manner, particularly hogs. They can get that industry back up to speed within a matter of months. Beef cattle, a little bit different. Cattle numbers in the United States is still significantly high. For us to look forward to, I'm thinking of changing our business model so we can actually do direct trading. One of the issues we have, though, a side of beef right now, I usually target 700-pound carcasses. So a side of beef would be 350 pounds. An asking price for everything to be processed, packaged, frozen, and ready for you to pick up. Somebody's going to have between $1,200 and $1,500. Our economy is suffering here in Western New York. People don't really have that kind of money. So in order to alleviate that, we feel if we did direct marketing, I'm really looking at putting a business model, actually having a processing facility on my farm, so that somebody needs several pounds of ground beef or some roast or some bundles like that at an affordable cost, we can do that. I think that's the future. We need to get away from some of the large scale packing plants in the United States, which really harvest approximately 90% of all beef harvested at any given time. Whereas if we can go back to, instead of having just the small abattoirs, mid-sized plant that might be able to harvest 50, 70 cattle a day, that would go with these branded programs that would look at local distribution, that would be a big help. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of consumers out there to be very interested in buying locally produced product. So that's where we're at now.
It's a good look also of educating consumers about what actually goes into producing these cattle, these pigs, the costs, and just how intricate our food supply is. If it's not so simple of just raising an animal and then getting it straight to market, there's a lot in the middle there. Pamela, I want to go to you in terms of crops. Even before this, there was quite a bit of criticism about mass farming, animal production, and questions about sustainability. And that is something that CoLab was created sort of to counteract. Do you think this pandemic has shifted consumers' attitudes or what the future might look like in terms of where we're getting our goods from?
Oh, I think it has quite a bit. You know, we we were created to really provide our local market with a nice variety of delicious, healthy, locally grown produce. We don't do any type of monoculture in one greenhouse span, 16,000 square feet. We have everything from tomatoes and beans and cucumbers and peppers and garlic and beets, radishes, etc. You name it. We're growing all in the same space. So our big goal is to see, what variety can we have available to our local market, grow it locally, sell it locally, cook it locally. What we have found with customers now, we have a lot of new customers because of this pandemic and because of the way we've been able to shift to online ordering and then drive up pickup. Their comments are, I go into the grocery store, I can't find anything that was grown in Florida. I've got tomatoes from here, peppers from there, things from all over the place. And it was in the news, a couple of weeks ago about these farmers down in Homestead having to, just drop their crops out in the fields and everything going to waste. And people are wondering, well, why can't I find those squash and those tomatoes or those peppers in my grocery store if they're having to trash them? And why am I, having to buy things that are not only from out of state, but then from out of the country? And it's causing people to really look at how this food distribution system works. And hopefully it's going to disrupt it a bit, and it is going to have people focus more on the local farms and the things that we can grow here.
Yeah. It's an interesting point of, I mentioned at the top of the speech that we are seeing both a massive shortage in goods, but then we're also seeing, to your point, Pam, of crops being left in the field. I was reading a story the other day about hundreds of pigs being euthanized because they can't get them to processing plants. And for the average consumer, you see this and you wonder, well, why is that? Why do we have these two things? Jim, you've been working quite a bit with the state, if I recall correctly, and working on these issues. Can you help explain this dichotomy to viewers of why this exists, of having shortages and things going to waste?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I sit on the state board for Pennsylvania Farm Bureau and are involved in a lot of different things. I was on a call this morning just discussing a lot of things as to where we're at. It is really a struggle for the consumer to watch those stories of animals being euthanized, and they go to the grocery store and the meat's not there. It's also a real frustration for the farmer to have raised the animals and have no place to go with them. As it was mentioned, Cargill is not far from where I am, and there's a number of the large packing processors that have laid off people. They have people sick with the virus. They have people that don't want to work. They're limiting or closing. And with the numbers that we have to move every day to meet the needs, even a slowdown. I understand at this point we're at about 70% capacity for processing with pigs. One of the issues with pigs, and there's this whole process that moves along that. There's the pigs that are having little ones and they're weaning them that go out as feeder pigs. And then you have the ones that are ready to go to market. Our processing plants are not designed for a 300 plus pound pig. They just physically, the lines of processing doesn't handle an animal that big. So what do you do with them? And the last few weeks is when you put the most money into feed. And now you have pigs that are overweight. You have other pigs that are already weaning. They have to have some place to go. And without a place to process, that's why there are so many and predicted even more to be euthanized. The cycle of beef is a little longer. So, I mean, you can keep beef for an extra couple months where you can't hardly keep a pig for an extra few days. So there's a little bit difference there, but that's a lot longer cycle. Chickens is shorter yet than the pigs. And that's why, we've seen stories of eggs being crushed because they have no place to go with the chicks when they hatch out, because they haven't been able to market the mature birds. So, farmers keep farming. We have to keep feeding our animals. We have to keep doing what we do every day. We're providing the food, and the consumers want and need the food. It's the processors in the middle that are really holding up things, and probably no fault of theirs. It's the coronavirus. It's sick people. It's there's a variety of things that play into it, and it's going to take a while, as Steve said, to smooth it back out to where everything is clicking in a progression that meets everybody's needs, for the farmer to be able to move his animals and for the consumer in the store to be able to find whatever cuts they want without a limit. Milk is a similar thing. I got to touch on that. Dairy farmers are really struggling. Why is it limited milk in the store and the farmers are dumping their milk? And that's a lot of money. And farmers are struggling anyway. The price has dropped, and most probably won't get paid for the milk that they dumped. But you have to milk those cows every day, and you can't hold fresh milk. You've got to be able to move it. And so, as farmers, it's a real hard thing. And farmers aren't the issue here. We're making it. We're producing it. We just got to get it to the consumer.
It's great to hear that farmers and ranchers are still producing, and that this is not impacting things on that end of, it's going to take a while for this food to get down to consumers, but the process is still moving along. We're seeing a lot of that same gratitude here in the comments. Nicole says, "Thank you, farmers, for all that you do. We literally couldn't live without your efforts." Other people are really into supporting their local operations. Cynthia says she is getting food deliveries of fruit and vegetables from a local family-owned farm. They used to sell them out of a flea market, and now they are using a Google Doc to take orders. She's finding it very helpful. Now she can focus on her kids and schooling and less on everything else, which I think is a great point of, we're all now cooking at home and juggling raising kids and homeschooling and working and everything else that life is bringing on right now. So a lot of gratitude from viewers. Thank you all so much for joining us today and walking us through what is happening on the ground with our food production, and hopefully giving people a little bit more insight into everything that goes into these productions. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice to meet you guys.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much for joining us. We will be back here live tomorrow at noon Eastern.